I've argued on this channel that the problem with politics is not necessarily in one party, it's in both. The way that cash flows within the party structure itself, it gives a certain bias in a direction towards people with the means, with that cash. I've also made the point that said, however goes the Democratic Party within the context of this primary and the election itself, so goes the nation. That not only is this primary important in the context of who it chooses to be its standard bearer, but also the soul of the party itself is at stake. And I will go on further to be more provocative. The fate of the country is at stake, and maybe even the world. Save the cheerleader, save the world. That's a different story, but my point is somewhat the same. Within the context of this particular contest that's taking place, meaning within the context of the Democratic Party with the 20-something people that are on stage or trying to vie to get on stage, any conflict, meaning there's a rule set that these guys have to work under, because any conflict, anything that gets out could be used by the Republican Party to hit them with, meaning something that they may say or do within the context of the campaign and the primary may be used against them later on when they're running against Donald Trump. And Lord knows Donald Trump is willing to use anything he can get his hands on. Hypocrisy doesn't necessarily matter in this process. So they have to run this and play this in somewhat of a muted fashion. But within the context of that muted fashion, Tulsi Gabbard just slammed Elizabeth Warren, landing a clean blow to the chin when Elizabeth Warren stuck her chin out. Let's talk about it. I hope you guys are doing all right. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. So as I was saying before, the contest, this primary, has to be done within a certain boundary, has to be done between the lines of sorts. Meaning in the way that the contestants are going after one another, these contestants have to be very aware, acutely aware, that the Republican Party is going to use whatever they bring up in that primary, if possible, against them. So the attacks that they can level have to be coded within a particular way that can't be used to hurt them later on. However, they are still attacks nonetheless. And I would say that Elizabeth Warren has stuck herself up, or put herself out there in this kind of sneering fashion that Tulsi Gabbard nailed her on. And Tulsi Gabbard should have nailed her on it. If you remember, Elizabeth Warren came out maybe a couple of weeks ago saying that she wasn't going to appear on Fox News. She made a big production about it, dramatic and loud. I'm not going to appear on Fox News. That's a hate monger network. It's a conspiracy theorist factory. Now, mind you, she's a Democrat, and they've been screaming at the height of their lungs about a conspiracy theory for the past 3 years. And not just about a conspiracy theory. Elizabeth Warren went so far as to call for impeachment. Impeachment on what, you may ask? On something that was based on a conspiracy theory. Do you know how thin that is? Do you know how shallow that is? And yet, that's what they've been running with. And you're going to call Fox News a conspiracy theorist palace. Fair enough. But on your own. Let's say it that way. But going beyond that point, even if she's right, are there no preachers in hell? I asked that question last week because I think that's an apt question to get across exactly the problem with Elizabeth Warren's argument here. Are there no preachers in hell? Whatever you want to think of the network, there are people that watch that network. Not all of those guys are hardcore right-wingers, and there's going to be a percentage, a probabilistic percentage, that you could possibly get by going on that network and making your cases, standing in the arena, standing like the dogs bark at you, and you make your ideological point on why your view of the world is the view of the world that should be espoused in the presidency. There will be questions that MSNBC and CNN would ask you. Or let me say it this way, there will be questions that an audience on Fox News, because that audience is decidedly to the right. And not saying that unfair questions, but have a certain perspective and context in the way that those questions are asked that people may want to hear you answer, but you would never be asked on MSNBC and Fox News. It says something about the candidate if the candidate is willing to go into the arena in that way and to make their case. The problem here is that Bernie Sanders went into this arena, and Bernie Sanders rocked this arena. Bernie Sanders came out looking like a rock star. Fox News was fair to him, even though the perspective of some of the questions were to the right, but not unfair. And in such, you were able to see a candidate who was confident in himself, could answer these questions put forward to him by the audience, and could go in there and own the place. Own it. Why can't Elizabeth Warren do something like that? And again, are there no preachers in hell? And is Elizabeth Warren only running for a certain section of the population? Is she going to be president of America or president of a certain section of America? Which one is it? Are there no preachers in hell? Aren't those the people that you want? Aren't those independents? And you realize a lot of people don't even watch that stuff on Fox News. When I see it, I watch it online. This notion that they're going to somehow financially benefit from your town hall. Yes, they may get people in. No, it's not going to be the end-all be-all of their finances. This is a mistake for Elizabeth Warren. She should have went into that arena and made her point. And she would have been stronger for it as a candidate. And again, it is possible that you could have gotten people. There are people that watch this channel that say they are shocked that they agree with me on this stuff. And this channel is decidedly to the left, unapologetically so. I make no bones about it. I'm the person who's like, hey, let's nationalize the railways. Let's nationalize the power plants or our energy production. But to the degree that they agree with me on some of that stuff, they're sometimes shocked. I guess my point is, you'd be surprised on the people that you can bring to your audience. And if indeed Fox News is this hate gallery, is there not more of a reason to go? Is there not more of a reason to go? I'm not the only one that noticed this. One, Miss Tulsi Gabbard, was waiting in the wings and saw this. And Tulsi Gabbard puts out a statement that nails Elizabeth Warren square on the chin for refusing to go to this, refusing to go to the town hall. Right here. Jamarl, I'll sit down with anyone, anywhere, to help address the threats and challenges facing our nation today. That's right, anyone, including Fox News. Uh-oh. That's an open-handed slap. We're more than a year from the general election, but already other Democratic presidential candidates, Elizabeth Warren, have refused to attend Fox News town halls and debates. Whether I agree with their views or not, Fox News viewers are real people that I, as president, will commit to serving. I like that. It's not that I don't think Fox News is biased, but does that mean that they can't give you a fair town hall? Even if that town hall is somewhat to the right, you don't believe they can give you a fair town hall? And shouldn't you be able to answer the questions presented to you from the right? God, man, I believe this was an opportunity miss. Because some of the policies from a domestic front that Elizabeth Warren is putting out, I actually think will gain traction. If AOC ideas and Bernie Sanders ideas are gaining traction from the standpoint of the right. Not all of them, again, a percentage, but you don't need the entirety of everybody. You just need a percentage of people that creates a ruling, governing coalition. It doesn't necessarily mean even those people will switch their entire political affiliation. But they may agree with you enough where you entice them, you pique their interests, you raise an eyebrow. Maybe they don't think you're goblins. Maybe they don't think you're outright, coming and preying upon them, that you're actually real people, that you're pushing for ideas on this stuff. I think you massively miss an opportunity. And I'm so glad Tulsi Gabbard is nailing her on this very particular point. Now, granted, Tulsi Gabbard is asking for money here, but that's fine if she's asking for money, since she's nailing her on that point and she is running a campaign. Fox News viewers are real people that I as president will commit to serving, so I'm not interested in playing partisan games and trying to score political points. Yes, you are. You're a politician, but it's okay. I'm running for president to put the interests of the people first, ahead of the profit and ahead of the political convenience. in this part right here. In time of deep divisions, it's so important that we treat each other with respect as human beings deserve from each other. It's not only the right thing to do, it's also the only thing we can do if we're serious about making changes. If we truly want to solve the problems facing this nation, we have to be willing to listen to each other. Insinuation that Elizabeth Warren is not. We have to willingly take the concerns of others seriously and address them respectfully. In my time in Congress, I've seen many well thought out policies die in the House because it lacked bipartisan support. That support doesn't materialize just because you have a good plan. It takes relationships built on mutual respect and trust. Trust that you won't turn around and demonize the people on the other side of the issue. I want to show a clip where Tulsi Gabbard goes on Fox News. And by the way, there are a ton of these because Tulsi Gabbard has already been going on Fox News and essentially going any and everywhere that she's invited to, except this show, but any and everywhere else other than this show that she's been invited, and will talk to you about pretty much anything. She literally sat down with Joe Rogan, who would ask pretty much anything, for 3 hours. Joe Rogan said, "That's my girl. I don't want to hear about anybody else." He respected the hell out of her doing it. Shout out to Tulsi Gabbard. Shout out to Tulsi Gabbard. Let's take a listen to this. This is Tulsi Gabbard talking to Bret Baier. And this is kind of my point. She's been willing to go on Fox News and get into these back and forths with the hosts. Because again, these hosts are hardcore right-wingers. At a town hall, at the very least at the town hall, you're going to have people that have all sorts of political attitude. On Fox, these hosts are hardcore right-wingers. And she gets into these arguments back and forth, holding her shape in these positions that she knows is going to be controversial. And she knows they're going to disagree with her. And she holds her shape nonetheless. God, I love that. Sanders is my guy, but Lord knows, I love it when a person can do that. I gain so much respect for him. Let's hear Tulsi Gabbard having a back and forth with Bret Baier.
This is so important. Congress needs to act and pass this legislation.
On that, I apologize for the delay in the satellite. You said on March 28th that it was time to put aside partisan interests, and that now that the president is not guilty of conspiring with a foreign power, now must be the time to stand together and move beyond this divisive issue that has taken up enough of the national conversation. Did your party not get that message?
Look, this is a message for the country, and it's unfortunate for those who are continuing to put partisan politics ahead of the interests of the people of this country. To know that the President of the United States did not collude with another country's government, with a foreign government to interfere in our elections, is a good thing for all of us. It's a good thing for our country. We've got to...
The Democratic Party doesn't believe that. And right now, Elizabeth Warren is pushing for impeachment proceedings when Tulsi Gabbard has staked out her position as, look, this is nonsense. Here's the thing. Between the two positions, the public itself doesn't care about this. When they were doing polling on this, the public was like 1 or 2%. They didn't care about this issue. This issue didn't push them one way or the other in regards to who they were going to vote for. So if Elizabeth Warren is pushing for an impeachment proceeding, it seemed like that's a little bit off kilter with what the public wants. And not just off kilter. If the thought is that impeachment proceedings would tie down President Donald Trump during the time he's going for the election and has another avenue of attack, that's all entirely assuming that the public accepts this impeachment proceedings as legit and not a witch hunt. And there's no reason to believe that. Tulsi Gabbard, in this case, comes across as if she's above politics, which is a good place to be in an era of anti-establishment anger. And again, I don't say this with this notion that Tulsi Gabbard is going to win the presidency. Her objective is to push the debate to the left, especially from the standpoint of foreign policy. If she gets on that debate stage, she would have accomplished that objective. I just hope she gets gravy on top of accomplishing that basic objective.
To come together and work towards solving the very real challenges that people here in communities like this at Fort Madison, Iowa, and communities all across the country are struggling with and dealing with. And we can only do that when we come together and put people ahead of politics.
I want to ask you a specific question. In 2017, you visited Syria. You met with Bashar al-Assad. Recently, you were asked if he was a war criminal, and you couldn't really say. Can you say it tonight?
Look, like I said earlier, we have to be willing to meet with people who may be adversaries or potential adversaries or dictators or others in the pursuit of peace and security. What's more important than the question that you're asking right now is to focus on the cost of this regime change war on our country, the trillions of dollars that we've spent on waging a regime change war that has undermined our national security, strengthening terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda being stronger today in Syria than ever before, what to speak of the death and destruction that has been caused.
Sure.
Let's focus on the costs and the consequences of these regime change wars and work for the interests of our country, work for the interests of the American people, what to speak of the interests of the people in the countries where we're waging these wars, and stop. Yeah. That's why I'm running.
I love that. I mean, keep in mind, she gets hit with that constantly. You met with Assad, you met with Assad, you met with Assad. I hate to tell you this, as bad as Assad is, Bush was responsible for the death of 1 million people. If we're going to call Assad a butcher, how on earth do we allow Bush to go around finger painting? And doesn't that say a little bit something about us as a society that denigrates the life of Iraqis in this way, where their lives mattered so little that Bush could walk without any consequences? It's not that she's defending Bashar al-Assad here, by the way. Her point here is we've been engaged in one conflict after the next. And if you really want to get anything accomplished on the domestic front, meaning in the same way that Elizabeth Warren is saying she wants to get accomplished, you have to deal with the fact that you're spending $1 trillion a year on military, blowing stuff up. Part of the reason that the United States has fallen behind China is because we've been spending our wealth just blowing stuff up. It's been a jobs program, but it's been a jobs program that is not necessarily creating anything within the country itself, in as much as paying for Do you realize half of our military budget is personnel? Isn't that amazing? Half of the military budget is personnel. And we also make certain assumptions that if there's any kind of conflict, that the enemy is going to go along predictable pathways. It is possible that they've adapted to us. It's also possible that the money that we're dumping into the military is not necessarily going into bang for your buck in the same way that other nations may getting the bang for their buck, since we have a capitalist country that you can pretty much be ensured that there's corruption built into that process. Tulsi Gabbard is right. The nuclear clock is 2 minutes to midnight. Tulsi Gabbard is right. It's not about whether or not Assad is a butcher. It's about whether or not you want to spend another $1 trillion, not to mention human lives. Does Bret Baier have a kid? And is Bret Baier okay for that kid going into the military in order to liberate Syria? Is he okay with that kid dying in pursuit of liberating Iraq? What weapons of mass destruction, something that didn't even exist? I'm asking somewhat of a more deep question. We're okay with this notion of 1% of the country is in the military, in which case you have 1% of the country, the rest of the country, kind of checked out of this process. You have essentially the president's men, where he has his own private military. And for the most part, the rest of the country has been dejected and out of touch in this process. If it was your kid that had to go and liberate somebody, some desert somewhere, if it was your uncle, if your mom, your dad, are you okay with them making that particular sacrifice? It's one thing for somebody else's mom, dad, brother, sister to go into the military and take on those tasks that the president, Donald Trump, deems necessary to take on, essentially these neocon policies. But what if it was your kid? Should we really be involved in these conflicts in the way that we're involved in? And do we really need to get instigated into these processes where we're knocking over one government after the next? My answer is no. My answer is save that money and invest that money into projects at home. China has been invested in AI, has been invested in manufacturing technology, infrastructure. These things are going to pay off dividends in this country. It's going to pay out dividends. We, on the other hand, not so much. It's time for that to stop. And Tulsi Gabbard, on this point, is absolutely right. Elizabeth Warren missed out. She should have went on Fox News, and she should have stood her ground as these right-wingers asked her questions. Donald Smead, do you think Warren was scared of Pocahontas smears? That's a good question, right? Like they were going to bring up the Pocahontas thing. I don't know if she was... See, this is a hard one. I don't necessarily know if she's being earnest in regards to her reasoning. It's possible. It's also possible that it's not the case. It's possible that, working with the Democratic Party, they said they don't want anybody going on Fox News. That's also possible, where she was just trying to hold party line. Her reasoning doesn't make sense. There are a lot of independents who watch Fox just for a different opinion. There are a lot of people who watch Fox not on the network itself, but online. There are all sorts of people who you need to reach that you missed out. You totally missed out. Let's see. I guess this. Kills for a living. So none of these candidates are going to attack each other, pretty much. The Democrats are so weak, always trying to be moral and fair. That's a blood sport, not patty cakes. Dude, you have no idea how much I agree with you. You have no idea how much I agree with you. With the caveat, it was blood sport during the election with Trump. It's been blood sport over this last 2-3 years. Democrats have this image of being weak. And so when people look at them, they look at them through this context of these guys are weak, these guys are moral, and it's not other stuff. That's what they say. But what do they do? I mean, in this process, you've had them try to openly take down a president of the United States using a conspiracy theory to do so. And once that conspiracy theory was found out to be full of it, they continued on down that path of screaming about impeachment. If Republicans did this, you would think, oh, these fucking Republicans are just being Republicans. But this behavior doesn't get put into the proper context because Democrats are considered to be weak. That viewpoint of weakness, colors, everything else. Assume for the moment that they're not as weak as you think they are. They just coat their arguments in these kind of moralistic terms for their base. But assume they still go for the same objectives that Republicans go for. Maybe not as good or as cutthroat in the overt sense. But understand, in the last presidential election, the Democratic Party in some way had a spy, a spook, inside of the Ukrainian embassy. They own up to that point. Clearly, there was some association between the Democratic Party and the Ukrainian government because all this information started to be leaked on Manafort. Ukrainian courts themselves said that this was an improper intrusion into the American politics. Republicans have no reason to try to get this information on Manafort. This was the Democratic Party doing so. You ask this interesting question, did the Obama administration have anything to do with this? That gets interesting, and we don't know an answer to that. Now, in the context of Democrats being weak, people would be like, I don't believe it, no drama Obama. But if it was a Republican, they would say, yes, that's exactly what that Republican did. I'm saying the lens of this weakness stuff. Yeah, they may be weak in regards to pushing back against Republicans, but in some respects, that's because, let's be honest, they have the same donors or similar donors. If they're pushing for tax cuts, their donors are happy. Their donors aren't hurt one iota when they're pushing for more tax cuts. Even though they may not necessarily want it in the objective wider world, they're perfectly okay with this stuff, this eventuality. My point is, they can fight when it's something they want to fight on. The problem is, the party itself is not structured in the sense of, at the very least, has been unsold. Meaning, the soul has been ripped out of the party, and it has been ripped out of the party for the last 40, 50 years. All of this, for the last several years, the goal has been to try to reinsert the Democratic Party. That's what the Justice Democrats are trying to do. That's what brand new Congress is trying to do. That's what AOC and some of these other people are trying to do. Whether or not this is successful or not, it's a secondary story. But understand, this was a cutthroat plan to try to take down the President of the United States. And this war of attrition that came afterwards was anything but weak. It was anything but weak. I may not like it, I don't even think it's going to bring in the political hit points. But what it did serve to do was constrain the behavior of Donald Trump while Donald Trump was in that office, because he was terrified of doing anything because he didn't want to get connected to the prosecutor. Weak to some degree, yes. In some degree, no. Donald Aldo. Do you think that Trump and Bolton will pull a surprise Venezuela bomber on U.S. soil next year? Great way to get a wall and reelected. I don't think that gets him reelected. Look, here's Donald Trump has several problems in regards to the election. He's picked fights all over the world. In 2 years, he's going to be running in an election. All of those issues are sensitive areas. And if all of those issues are sensitive areas, all of them have the potential to blow up. What about a trade dispute with China? That's where we're at now. Prices are going to go up. Donald Trump is saying it's a patriotic duty to pay higher prices on that stuff. Maybe yes, maybe no. But I tell you this, Americans have gotten used to not caring about whether it comes from, because again, this is a capitalistic impulse. Cheapest price, maximize your profit. And Americans who have seen their real wages go down, literally under Trump, what are they going to do? Of course they're going to go for the cheapest price. They need to make their wages stretch. They're not getting it at their jobs. This is already somewhat a problem, right? You have your public paying higher wages. You have another situation with farmers in specific areas that Donald Trump needs to get elected. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio. China boycotting those products. Like China radio came out. Boy, I've been listening to to television stations in the various countries because I wanted to get the various perspectives. So between China, Qatar, Britain, etc., France. But interestingly enough, China has gone on this thing of potential boycotting of American products. This is on top of the tariffs that China put on U.S. goods coming into the country, particularly farmers. It was targeted. It wasn't this kind of haphazard thing. They went directly towards people that Trump needed to get elected. They went for his head. Not to mention the thing with Iran, where there's not enough. Saudi Arabia can't meet the oil supply, meaning the price of oil is also going to go up. This is also with a president that was willing to shut down the government for over a month in order to get a wall that was entirely unnecessary. There are several things that could blow up all at once. Venezuela is another issue. If the United States gets bogged in some kind of conflict in Venezuela, or bogged in some kind of conflict from Iran, like if something pops off, people are going to immediately assume that Donald Trump is lying us into a war. That will be the death knell of his presidency. This is not something that his base is on board for, even though Republicans and Democrats may have a certain bipartisan consensus. Sanders has been against it. He's been outspoken for it. Tulsi Gabbard has been against it. He's been outspoken. I am uncertain of Elizabeth Warren's foreign policy. I have no clue what her foreign policy is. But by the way, regardless of how good her domestic policy is, foreign policy would be a red line to me. How on earth are you going to accomplish your domestic policies if you can't deal with military spending? I mean, that is utterly obscene. Bolton, I can't refer to him anymore unless I add additional terms. He will forever be John Bolton, Lord of the Black Site and Warden of the Swamp. Look, I said before, people are policy. If you're going to take a weapon like John Bolton and you're going to use him, you're using him exactly for the person that he is. Meaning the squeezing of Iran, this assumption that John Bolton has the same goals as Donald Trump. I would imagine he is a hard dog to keep on the porch. And fact of the matter is, if something happens, then the president will be compelled for behavior. Meaning, it doesn't matter what instruction you gave John Bolton, you don't have ultimate control over the situation if you get your own new Gulf of Tonkin, or your own new weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, or your own new incident, like in where the CIA wanted to use Cubans, like blowing up something in Florida in order to give a pretext to go into Cuba, or Syria, the faked, staged bombings or supposedly chemical weapons. Pretexts. We're talking about pretexts. Cheryl, oh, Cheryl, I love your Bernie coverage. Keep it up, Jamal. Oh, thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate it. I have a story with Sanders. In fact, I have a few stories with Sanders that I need to get to. All right, guys, I'm going to end this. Let's see, who's here? Garnome, the legislator Warren is on the party leash. Yes, she can't be relied upon in the back of reform. Yes, I agree with that. God, I agree with that. This is one of those times where I agree with you completely, Garnome. She's shown herself to be dodgy on this stuff. Order of chaos. The candidate has one job in running, that is to make the position on the issues known to the public. Yes, and some of that public just so happens to be on Fox News that you're going to need. You're going to need those independents. You're going to have to be willing to go out there and put yourself out in a way that there are a lot of people who don't see Fox News in the way that you see Fox News. They don't see that, this faux news, this pseudo news that these guys put out at times. And there's still a kernel of it. And if we're being honest, there's just shades of difference between MSNBC, CNN. It just sets a range of debates on the issue. Oftentimes those range of debates are somewhat contrived and is usually to corral, should we regime change, should we not? Or should we regime change or should we have sanctions? It's like, well, wait a minute. Why do we have to have any of that? That's not part of the debate, buddy. Get back in line. Yeah. I love Tulsi. Who said that? GT man. A lot of people do. Like, and on the left and the right, in odd cases. I've heard people on the right say the same thing. BC met with Assad. I thought Trump just met with North Korea. He did. He did, right? Delm Eldor. There is also possible South China Sea skirmishes between the United States. Yes. So that's the other part, right? China has military allegiance with Russia. And there's this aspect of being a superpower that provokes war. Like, understand what's taking place here. You have the two largest economies. Now, you can make an argument that China's economy may be larger at this point, but whatever that economy is, they are 3 times our size. Of course, they're going to surpass us. So this capitalistic country takes it upon themselves to go around any notion of fair play, meaning we're not going to beat you in business by offering a better price and a better product, et cetera, et cetera. No, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to change the rules to try to corral you because we can't keep up and we can't compete. We're going to do the same thing for natural gas, meaning we're going to attack Germany to try to get them to not use Russia's natural gas plant. We're going to do the same thing for Britain. We're going to browbeat Britain and to not use Huawei. Personally, I love my Huawei device. If it wasn't for my Huawei device, it would have been impossible to travel. That's where I'm at. Not to mention, there's a certain hypocrisy associated with the United States saying they're going to be spying on your networks in the way that the United States was spying on your networks. It's just there's a lot of stuff that can pop off. And I strongly suspect that what is going to happen is that the United States' position in the world is going to be diminished from one failure after the next. Maduro isn't going anywhere. Iran isn't going to be collapsed. Either Iran is going to be attacked or Iran is going to exceed President Trump's presidency. Meaning either something dramatic is going to spark off or he's just going to lose. Those are not great, that's not a great range because everybody knows that he has no penchant for going beyond a certain limit. So you would literally have to go beyond the brinksmanship. Or the brinksmanship at that point draws a certain degree of blood that creates a feeding frenzy of its own. Either way, this is a clown car in regards to foreign policy. And the United States, in one country after the next, is being told to kick rocks. We're completely isolated on Iran with the exception of a totalitarian state and an apartheid state. Those are our bedfellows. In regards to this other stuff, we're sanctioning or trying to sanction, threatening to sanction Turkey because they wanted to buy weapon systems that are better than apparently American weapon systems. Otherwise, why would they buy them? Same thing with India, where we're talking about sanctioning. These guys are supposed to be our friends. We've gotten to the point of attacking our friends because we can't compete with the various countries around the world in regards to the technology. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Let's see. Balthazar. But who met with the space emperor Zeno? I don't know if they know what that is, Balthazar. Zeno, that's the that's the oh God, what is it? Tom Cruise. It's Tom Cruise. What is that thing called? Oh God, what is the name of it? It's on the tip of my tongue. It's what Tom Cruise is a part of. They got a thing in Germany. What is the name of this thing? What is the name of this thing? I know you guys know. Scientology, that's it. Scientology. It's like, it's that, God, that's such a weird fucking thing. It's like trillions of years ago. Like farther back than the universe existed, something took place. I love that. Yeah, Balthazar Cal is fighting the good fight, but who knows, he may get ALC elected president if we become Atlantis. Alright, I'm going to end this. Yeah, Lord Zenu. The mighty Zenu. Alright, guys, I'm going to end this, and let's get some chess afterwards. Because I've done a ton of these shows today. Gotta be honest, I'm dead tired. And I haven't been to bed yet, so I don't necessarily know how the chess thing is going to go. For my patrons, I'm going to upload my first Black Box episode. We've just finished. My wife is putting the finishing touches on the video, and so patrons or people who contribute, they'll be able to see the video either in the Facebook or in the Patreon. Yeah, in the Patreon account or the Facebook. It should be done by tomorrow, but maybe tonight, so we'll see. If I'm not playing chess, she'll let me know. She was getting gruff. I paid her a lot of money to finish it tonight. She didn't feel like doing it tonight. The power of cash. She was like, I said, I'm not going to force you or compel you because I know you don't feel like doing it. She's like, but I'll give you $50. That's not force. It's free exchange between people that have choices, right? That's capitalism. You know, I'm going to pay you to do a job that you don't particularly want to do, which is why I'm paying you as a certain compensation for you to do this mind-numbing task. You don't have to accept this. You don't have to, but you do need to eat, and you do need, to clothe yourself and to pay for your medication that's too high, and you do need to pay for your house and your college and your car. You have things that you need to pay for, right? Right? It's like this notion that that's freedom is utter nonsense. Freedom is if you have an actual choice in the matter, but you don't have a choice in the matter. Your only choice is really what plantation you want to work at. If we as a society came together to ensure that we, at the very least, had the basics of our needs, then you could make an argument that this capitalistic stuff is freedom. Because at that point, you could say that people could give or take it, that those people had a societal base that ensured that the basic requirements of their life was intact. And so any choice that they're making in that case is, yes, I'm going to do this task, not because I need to eat, not because I'm being forced to do so. I'm not working as a fry cook or as a burger person because I'm forced to do this job. I'm doing so because I want to do this job. But therein lies the difficulty. Who chooses to be a fry cook if you don't have to be a fry cook? How does Burger King and McDonald's handle their stores if nobody picks up those stores because their basic needs are met? But this is the catch. This is the caveat. This is the catch with the whole freedom issue that's being made. It's not freedom. These people are making free choices per se. They're being compelled by their needs. And there's a society and an economic system that emboldens that. The very uncertainty, insecurity is a feature, not a bug. When they're screaming that, no, we can't have a federal jobs guarantee, they're screaming about that because they don't want the competition. If you were desperate for a job, you may be willing to take a job that you didn't necessarily want because you needed to feed your family. If there was a job guarantee, then the private sector loses a certain degree of power over the individuals in the society itself because worst come to worst, they can always get a job from some federal government or some federal program. Our society gets it wrong, man. Like, if you're talking about freedom, this is not the way to go about it. And there should be serious conversations about whether or not we should get rid of this notion of need or this notion of poverty. We can do those things. We have all the technical acumen in the world to pull that stuff off. We could revolutionize this planet, even from the standpoint of climate and sustainability. Our perspective on this is off. What we consider to be the problem is actually the solution. Technology is our way out. It's not a problem. It's only a problem if you have billions of dollars and you want to maintain that dominance of those billions of dollars, in which case you don't want other people to be free and catch up. But what is our perspective? In the same way that the rich push this notion of rugged individualism, what if it's in the rugged individual's best interest to work in a group, work in collaboration with other people to accomplish certain goals in their society? They're choosing as individuals to work in their best interests. And do we really care about the interests of a 1% that has benefited magnificently off of what I would consider to be class war, propagated on essentially a population of deer and dove and rabbits and bunnies that wasn't paying attention to the slaughter that was taking place? I'll end this here. I'm not going to keep this long. Balthazar, the mere folk aren't sending their best. They're sirens, they're hunters, and some, I assume, are good fish people. Some, I assume, are good people. Scalise. Alright, guys. I'm going to end this here. Guys, really, I really do appreciate all the support for the channel. I was focusing a lot on international stuff. And anytime you do international stuff and get into this notion of conflicts and everything else, they just demonetize. So all of the videos I did today, with the exception of maybe 2, got demonetized. I was like, motherfucker. So I say that to say thank you for all the assistance you guys give to the channel. You all have a good one. If you enjoy this content, please consider sharing, liking, or subscribing. But also, you can support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks, everyone.